Oh, I'm in the wrong chair, aren't I? Do what? Ooh.
Hey, Dan, how are you?
Good. How are you tonight?
Good.
I was gonna ask you. This didn't seem like exact wording that you used. This would kind of indicate that we're wondering, if the vote went this way or that way, if money could go to the fire district.
Gates my hair.
Just asking.
What's that?
Vinny
Gates my hair. You were just in like.
I was specifically asking, if we, like if we voted no, is that money then?
Of course.
Great. The motion passes. At this time, I will take public comment during this portion of the meeting. Anyone may speak on any subject does not later appear on the agenda. 5 minutes per person will be allowed. However, I am going.
Just heard that.
I just bounced off Starlink.
That's okay. That was funny. I didn't recognize my own voice outside my head. I'm going to have I'm going to have Scott Baker come forward first to do our Parks and Rec update, and I will give you more than 5 minutes, Scott, because we are anxious to hear this. Yes.
All right. Can you hear me okay? Scott Baker, Executive Director of Northern Wasco County Park and Recreation District, 602 West 2nd Street, the Dalles. Good evening. So I've got some great news to share with you regarding the Mill Creek Greenway, which is that for those of you board members who are new, the Mill Creek Greenway is a bike and pedestrian friendly walkway along Mill Creek. And this segment that we're talking about tonight connects 2nd Street to 6th Street in the riparian zone right along Mill Creek. Because of the basalt cliffs nearby, it necessitates an elevated boardwalk, kind of cantilevered out over the creek to protect the fish and habitat and keep it within the riparian zone in the shaded area. It is by far the most expensive piece of this project to build. Preliminary design has it coming in just about $3 million. We were lucky enough to get a grant through ODOT for this project that required a 10.27% match. That match largely came from Urban Renewal, a little bit from the Park District. And that match was then put into an escrow account along with the funds from ODOT, and ODOT's been drawing those funds down. And the largest piece of that is coming up, which is the A&E section. And so this design is going to expand on the preliminary design that was done originally to create actual construction documents that then can be used to put out to bid. So this design phase is going to be put out on Oregon buys by the end of the month. Right now, ODOT has spent the last period refining the rules because it was a brand new grant program. We were the first people to ever be funded through this program. And so they had to do a lot of work to kind of create the process by which the funds would be distributed, all of the bureaucracy, the administrative work that needs to make this happen. That was completed. Then ODOT prepared the bid package for the design work. That's been done. That design RFP is now under DOJ review. Once it's reviewed, it'll be posted to Oregon buys. And I'm already getting calls from like KPFF and other architect services asking questions. I keep referring them back to ODOT. I want to make sure that anybody who's interested in this project is getting the same information. And so, but that just shows me that the folks have already heard about it. They're interested in it. And one of the big concerns for us as we go through this is just that we wouldn't get anybody to bid on this project. So that's one of the hurdles that we need to cross. So this is going to be posted here shortly. We'll get the A&E work done. That's they're expecting that the RFP said February 2024. I don't think that that's going to quite happen. It'll probably be closer to March, and then anticipated to go through August 2025 because it is such a technologically, difficult piece of the trail to build. And so after that, then that will then go out and for a construction bid. And so that's where we're at right now. I know that we have some new board members who maybe aren't familiar with this project. And so if you're curious and you have the time, I would just invite you to come to our Park District website at nwprd.org. If you go Parks and Trails and drop down, it says Mill Creek Greenway. On that, there's a YouTube video link. And in that, we have sort of a artist rendering of flyover. It's a video flyover of what the project entails. And it's really, pictures 1,000 words. Look at that video. If you have any questions, by all means, reach out to me at the Park District office, and I'd be happy to answer them. But that's where the project is at right now.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Anyone have any questions for Scott? We've got him here.
So Scott, just to make sure I followed you, it's design phase probably through August, then go out to bid. Construction, can it happen at any time, or does it really have to be like a warm season construction?
I think that there's going to be some potentially fish windows that they're going to be working around. I think that that's going to design the in-water, or decide the calendar for the in-water work. But I'm not familiar enough with those. I know that those work windows exist, but I'm not familiar enough with those windows to say for certain when that construction is going to happen. But there is, quite a bit of work to do, especially to make the trail accessible. as requires quite a few switchbacks going up from river level up to 6th Street. That's outside of the riparian zone, and so I imagine that they can do that work anytime.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Well, thanks for the update.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
Have a good night.
Good evening. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment? Yes. Please state your name and address into the microphone so it can be recorded.
My name's Claire. I'm a resident here in the Dalles.
It's just better for everyone on Zoom and everything. Thank you.
So my name is Claire. I'm a resident here in the Dalles, and you know, kind of come to it from, you know, family's been in the area for a long time. Legacy is deeply important to our family. My grandfather did a lot of work to create some of the museums and area attractions here. And one of the things that he considered really key to the success and the continued community involvement was really, you know, to educate people about the history of our area, but also to bring in tourism. The tour boats were very important to him. And I didn't realize that Tony's was being demolished until it was gone.
Mm.
I didn't realize that the Tony's building where I got a coat every year from my grandmother was gone
Mhm.
until it was gone. And the city council is making a lot of changes right now, especially to portions of our legacy as a community. And I would just deeply like to see more outreach to the community, especially as we look at urban renewals and continued goals like spaghetti feed, getting on Facebook. It's great that you open a public comment period on your website, but that doesn't involve your community. And I just like to see you involving the community in these decisions, not just after the fact when we're going to put a big eyesore up, but before it happens, like to really involve us post-COVID, bring us in. That's all.
Well, thank you, Claire. Appreciate that. And we are taking some steps, assigning some duties to people to get that information out there. We do put a lot on our Facebook page, and I'm sorry for the shock. We were all disappointed that Tony's had to be torn down. It just ended up being some problems with asbestos and leakage, and it was just going to cost more to repair it than to replace it. And we've been looking for a number of years at putting another project on site, which fell through. And then we still haven't opened up the RFP yet. We're working on that. That'll be one of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight. Well, go ahead, Paula. Oh, I'm sorry, Paula. Thank you.
Is community involvement a core part of what's going to happen there? Or is that just saying, yeah, we're going to make it better?
Well, I guess maybe if one of you wants to speak to that, but I think when we publish these and have people attend the meetings, we definitely look for feedback. We've had other people come and speak to us about what's important to them, and I'm always welcome community input. But at some point we do have to make those decisions, and we do put a lot of articles in the paper. I don't know how else we would.
When you,
Mhm. Sorry, Claire, but thank you for coming.
So I feel like you're failing to involve our community. Like when we closed the shelter and stopped feeding homeless people right before the worst snowstorm we've had in probably at least 2 decades. You know, I don't think there was a public comment period. I didn't feel like I was informed about that. I don't feel like I was brought in on that decision either.
So, so that is a city council issue, but I am on city council, and because it's ongoing litigation. No, it's okay. No, I appreciate, we'll have the dialogue. There's 3 city councilors here and, we are working with St. Vincent de Paul. It's not something that we wanted to have happen. We are continuing to work with them. Things just go on in the background, as you can understand, in circumstances like that. And so I would.
I know I spent $200 on hot hands and distributed them in the community. What did you do?
I opened the shelter during 2019 and put those shelters out on the road and then turned it over to MCAC when they came along and could manage it as a nonprofit.
Okay, McCack was nowhere to be found when this happened.
That's just not true.
I called them. I wanted to know how I could help.
I think there are probably many people, citizens, elected, volunteers that were engaged. And I, for one, I'm one of your city councilors, and it agrees me a little bit to hear that you feel left out because, you know, we are a democracy and we encourage people to be involved, but we can't make people be involved and we can't make people attend
You can
meetings.
tell me what I can do.
You can show up and participate like you are
Yeah.
tonight. Yeah. Just like the rest of
How
us.
are you going to involve?
Participate.
How are you going to involve not just me, who's willing to dig through the website and find the meetings? How are you going to involve all of the rest of us?
You mean like all of the community? And I'm not being facetious. I'm going to ask, do you mean all of the community in like every decision we make? Because
I mean, trying to get the community in, not in every decision that you make, but in decisions that are life and death, in decisions that involve massive portions of our public trust. Yeah.
I feel like the people that want to know, it's hard to have a community conversation given that our media environment has been splintered, right? There's not one daily paper.
Absolutely. And you only see what you're prone to seeing. You don't know. I get that. But there's things like unedited and other Facebook groups that are,
Right, but there are also newspapers, there's two, and they do a pretty good job of covering. And I feel that people that really want to know the business of the city, this is just my personal thought. I don't speak for anybody else. But people that really want to know the business of the city can keep track of the basic or major developments by reading about them or attending meetings. Yeah.
Okay, so Claire, if you wouldn't mind, before you leave, and if you stay for the whole meeting, I'll talk to you after, but I understand if
Sure.
you slip out, would you please give Paula your contact information? And my phone number is also on the website. So if you want to reach out to me, but I will call you if you leave or
I
or
would
email you if you.
deeply appreciate a longer conversation. And thank you. I respectfully, I thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to make public comment? I think we got staff, so go ahead. Oh, the list is over there. Okay. Go ahead and come forward.
I'm one of them people that speak up, I guess, but I'm no good at it.
You are, Rick.
Damn it.
Much
I'm
appreciated.
scared.
And Claire both.
Okay. My name's Rick Wolf. I'm from the Dalles, Oregon, class of 72. Pretty darn proud of it. My short topic is public trust. Is this a directional or unidirectional?
I think it's
Um,
directional.
Yeah. So I've been studying, I've been trying to understand how this works. And I should mention I started regular school in 7th grade here in the Dalles. And I did graduate. Put in about a year and a half of college, and I just enough to get myself in trouble. Business. Public trust. This is public. This is public. There's something that's mentioned that I caught on to in my reading. And it's the Historic Landmarks Commission as an example for public trust. It says on 10.12.0 3-0, the Dallas Historic Landmarks Commission. The commission shall consist of 6. I gotta get these eyes fixed. The commission shall consist of 6 members, 5 of which are from the citizens at large. And we have 2 people. We have 2 people from the museum. One doesn't carry a vote, but that's an organization.
Which museum?
The Dallas Fort Museum with the chain link fence around it.
Okay.
And another one is from St. Peter's. And another one is from the I think it's Eric Gleason up at the fort. And a very kind woman. I don't know her name at the church. And then the guy up what I'm saying is they're all organizations. They're not public at large. And I could ask Google right now and play it on this microphone, and it's public, like me.
So are you specifically talking about the landmarks, or are you just talking in?
The whole Landmarks Commission is organization. Someone's from the Civic Auditorium, and someone's from the graveyard, from a church, and from the museum. And each time that I listen, I pay attention to this because I love buildings.
Okay.
And it's always being represented. And when we have things going on, like, it doesn't have an address, but I met with an archaeologist. He's government, federal archaeologist, Wolf Run Switchback.
I don't know anything about the Landmarks Commission because I'm not on it.
Okay.
However, our planning director, Joshua Chandler, is here. And I think that if it is just specific to them and not also this board, I didn't want to cut you off if it was something I could answer. I think you could meet with him outside of that and get that concern addressed.
I appreciate it. It's not the only,
Okay.
it's not the only avenue that the public trust is being eroded.
Okay.
And these people's trust being eroded. I'm public. I talk with public. I have a lot of friends here in town, family.
Yeah.
And the trust is down. And it's not, you're the people that speak for us. And so is Beautification Committee, and so is the historical landmarks. And what we see is the city hall population doing things, big things, without involving public people.
Right.
When you have organizations being represented there.
Sure. So it sounds to me like this is more of like a city council issue.
Okay. I don't know where to land.
It's okay. It's very confusing. And Urban Renewal, this particular agency is is technically independent from city council. And we are, there are 3 members of city council here,
Yes.
but there are also members of the taxing districts that make up Urban Renewal.
Okay.
So I would love to talk to you offline. I think I do have your contact information
Yes.
from before, so let's chat and we could even bring the mayor into the conversation. So, but let's chat and let's figure out the best way to get your concerns carried forward. I don't want to dismiss you, but it isn't anything that anyone on this board
Absolutely.
for you.
I understand. I appreciate your time, and it's not easy to get up here for public people, and it's runs me wild.
Yeah.
But nice people like that just spoke,
Mm-hmm.
Claire. It's hard to get us in here. It really is. But when I was speaking with people in public, they're really open. They're really open to you also, so you should know.
Okay, I'll give you a call, okay? All right, thank you for coming. Is there anyone else who'd like to make public comment this time? Okay, let me wake my computer back up here. So we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 7. We are going to skip down to agency goals and objectives, draft revision and review. Is that you, Dan? Are you, okay?
But
Thank you, Josh. For the record, Dan Spots, Economic Development Officer with the city and the agency. Back in December, we spent quite a bit of time going over the goals and objectives for the agency, recognizing that these had last been reviewed, developed back in 2009. And the idea being that we would kind of get a lot of the homework done leading up to this meeting. What types of basic edits, changes might we solicit at that time for those goals and objectives? Keeping in mind that the goals and objectives then will set the stage for projects, specific projects, as we wind down the maximum debt that we have for the agency, which we will achieve in 2029. So strategically, how do we get from here to there using the resources that we have available? We have Elaine Howard, who is a statewide expert in all things urban renewal. She's on the call, and I'll be turning the mic over and the Zoom over to Elaine in just a second here. But I wanted to start by going over the revisions that we had discussed. First, in December, I've tried to capture those in several different documents, and I appreciate your patience as we review those. There are 4 documents. 2 of those are the same one. One has redlined edits from the conversation in December, and the second one, attachment B, same document, does not have those edits. The next document, attachment C, basically restructures some of the objectives, again, responding to comments, discussion back in December. And then the fourth one, D, is kind of my freewheeling a little bit more and doing more of a radical restructuring. There are a lot of goals in this document, and the intent of that last one is to try to transform some of those goals into objectives, measurable objectives. I've got no ownership totally in any of that stuff. It's it's your pleasure where we might want to go, but I wanted to start with at least seeing if your thoughts are accurately captured, reflected in one or more of these documents, and if so, whether you might provide us some guidance as to which of those we would proceed with. If we don't make any changes at all to goals and objectives, then they stand as they are. If we make changes, then according to the Urban Renewal Plan as it stands, those changes would need to go to the City Council for ratification. So we would follow up with a presentation to City Council. Elaine's role here, once I receive that guidance from you on one of these documents, I turn this over to Elaine. She facilitates, where do we go from here? Are we missing other major goals, objectives, things of that nature? And then proceeding on the next phases of this process. In February, we review the financial history of the entity, and that's actually probably going to be broken up into 2 sessions, February and March. We have received an updated maximum indebtedness report just as of today, and I'll revise that figure here in just a second. In fact, I probably should do so right now just for the record. And this would represent a correction to the staff report on page 2 of 7C, staff report.
You know what page that is in the actual packet?
Sorry?
Oh, I just wanted to know if you know what page that was in the packet. Is that
Ooh,
66?
thank you, Josh. 66 in the packet. The second paragraph down, where it says all of this is preparatory to the most vital task facing the agency, that 6.2 million was an estimate, and the figure that we will be presenting during the fiscal analysis in February is actually 5,756,258. 7,756,258. That
5 million.
5,756,258. That does not take into account pending projects, commitments to Basalt Commons, First Street reconstruction, Federal Street Plaza, the parking lot on East 3rd, things of that nature. So that 5.7 is going to be whittled down significantly beyond that.
Sorry, Dan, just for clarification, you said does not take into account, you mean 5.75 minus what we gave to Basalt Commons minus these other
Minus
things?
those other
All right,
costs.
thanks.
Probably somewhere, well,
Yeah, and regarding First Street, it's money has already been set aside. The agency already set aside money for First Street. So some of it First Street has been accounted for, but as I mentioned at the last meeting, there's been some cost escalations that would need to be factored in with this 5.7 as well.
But we'll get that in February when we go over the numbers. I mean,
Yeah, I
better
spoke to the
sense.
engineers last week on that. We should be getting final numbers for that escalation to that project by March.
Okay.
Yep.
Right, thank you.
so there again, emphasizing the need to have a strategy between now and 2029. Whatever the balance turns out to be, how do we best expend it? And so the setup here, broadly goals and objectives now, we get the financial analysis, a close analysis in February leading into March, and then in March, have the projects identified and ideally keep this all on track and know where we're going over the next few years here. So at this point, I guess I would entertain any questions that you have on the draft goals and objectives, comments.
How much money on First Street's already been set aside or dedicated to that project already?
On First Street.
I want to say like 3.5.
Million?
Yeah. 3.2, 3.5, I think.
That's close. That's fine. I just,
Did anyone have any questions?
I don't know if this question fits here, but Basalt Commons, does anybody know if they've been able to acquire a loan from a bank yet?
Our understanding is that they are closing in on that. We don't have a current report on that, but we're in constant,
Yeah.
weekly
I
conversation there.
understand, the interest rates, I'd wait till they came down too, if it was up to
Yeah.
me, but
And I think that's promising.
yeah. I just kind of want to know how these things are progressing. I mean,
Yeah.
if that does happen, it would be something on the tax rolls, which, that's one of my pet issues.
Yeah. We keep in contact there, and I would say promising.
Okay.
So I do have a question. So on Exhibit C compared to Exhibit D that you created for us, I did note that Exhibit C includes a mention of affordable childcare. And I don't think that's in Exhibit D. I'm just curious if there's a reason why that was not included in Exhibit D.
My suggestion in there, take it or leave it. I'm fine taking that out of there totally. Affordable housing was something I did not recall from the meeting, and I thought that given the work that we're doing on upper story residential downtown, I thought that probably should be in there, so I did want to put that in. Childcare is an issue near and dear to my heart. I'm working on another project in town, so perhaps not relevant here.
And to your point, Board Member Swift, Dan, did we possibly just forget to add the childcare to attachment D? Or was that the question?
Yeah,
Because
it's
it
only
is in
it's
A.
only in C, but not in
Okay.
D.
In that case, I think I might have misunderstood the question. Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah, so we may have just forgot to include it on the attachment D.
So any other questions? I have a couple, but I just want. No.
I'm not sure if this is a question or comment, but on attachment D, which I appreciate, I guess, let me back up. I appreciate the alternatives presented. Thank you. On attachment D, we've got metrics, which are always useful. I don't know that I would necessarily get excited about having, let's say on point D2 metric being parking created. The D2 says provide an adequate amount of properly located, et cetera, parking and maintain and manage, all of which is fine and good. And obviously we've, as an urban renewal agency are putting some money into expanding parking, but whatever we set as metrics tend to be goals that we aim towards. And given our limited funds, enough with the parking. We have plenty of parking at the current time, in my opinion. So I would try to rejigger that particular metric a little bit. Maybe parking maintained or parking ratio or something.
And
Um,
attachment D definitely goes into the weeds. I was taking more of a grant writing approach to that, where you need to be able to measure outcomes. And again, you can, it's in there for discussion purposes. I think C could well cover the bases in terms of the discussion from December, but however you want to proceed.
so I'm sorry, what specifically, which section or which page in the packet?
If we go with D, it is page 76, the last page.
I just want to make sure before I commented,
Yeah.
I will also just say, and thank you very much for preparing this and for listening to us at the last meeting. Unfortunately, Claire just stepped out, but I wanted to just highlight the fact, Mr. Wolf, as well, that we did have a discussion at the last meeting about more public outreach and being more proactive and making sure the public understands, what we're doing and when these big decisions come up. And so I am really excited that that is reflected in this new goals and objectives, which include potentially some town hall meetings, other kind of open forums where folks can come out. So just in terms, and unfortunately Claire just missed that, but in terms of providing those opportunities, I'm a big believer in more sunshine. Provide the opportunities. If you want to show up, great. If not, that's great too. So thank you for including that.
And that would be very much intentional. So we would envision actually going back to some public meetings and tell the story in person, and also doing more on the website, compiling photos. The Greenway project comes to mind tonight. I'd like to catch up with Scott and put a visual of that on the website.
Great. Anyone else? So I just wanted to ask a couple of questions about the two items that we added. So the first one, I'm going to jump back up to I think page 67. I like not printing stuff, but sometimes it makes it hard to find stuff. So when we say that we're going to support the respective missions of the urban renewal public taxing districts, what exactly does that mean? Because I don't actually have all of the mission statements in front of me, and their mission statements aren't necessarily, like, we want to support the districts, but maybe it's not their mission statement. Does that make sense? Like, or take their needs into consideration?
Trying to clarify on that one. I think there was a comment in December, fire department in particular.
Right? Yep, that's exactly
How
what
do
I'm
we,
thinking of.
is there some other more tangible way that urban renewal can benefit the fire department? I think was the example.
Yep.
But rather than focus on fire department alone, I wanted to capture all of the taxing districts with that suggestion. Are there ways, intentional ways, that urban renewal could provide tangible benefit, whatever that might be? Parks District certainly comes to mind, and that's a great example with Mill Creek, Mill Creek Greenway project.
Yeah.
Fire district, of course, the department is not in the district boundaries now, but looking down the road, I don't think it is.
What?
No, fire stations.
Fire station, the district, not the station. Referring to the station, looking down the road, the agency, hypothetical, the agency continues. You have a district extending across western the Dalles that would include the station, or might include a satellite station on the west side of the Dalles. Would there be infrastructure associated with that station that the agency could contribute to? Hypothetical, but possibly a case in point.
Well,
Or-
hypothetical, I kind of threw out at the fire district meeting. And it partly came to mind because,
Walter, could you scoot up to the?
yeah, I'm sorry. The Basalt Commons will have some low income housing, correct?
No.
No, it won't. Okay. But most of the people at the fire district kind of said, I don't think that's doable, not because of lack of cooperation, but just the rules. But I thought we could maybe primer have some money set aside so that as soon as the Salt Commons can have people move in, that Urban Renewals primered that with some money to pay portion of the rent for certain types of people. And those people, in my mind, would be like nurses and paramedics, because we have a shortage of those people in our community. And so to help get them moved here. But their opinion was you can't say we're going to help this group of people with their rent and exclude other professions. And that might be correct, you know. And besides that, I don't know that you could take urban renewal money and set it aside to help pay anybody's rent. You know, I don't think that fits in any of the goals and objectives, you know.
But I think just to the broader question and your question, trying to make an explicit goal here that we do need to keep in mind the various tax districts that constitute the agency, that are represented in the agency. And the Greenway being a prime example, are there other things like that we can be looking for down the road? Again, keeping in mind that if the agency continues and if you were to decide to have a new district, and I keep going back to West 2nd Street because it was cut out of the district originally back around 1993 or 2, memory serves, then would there be other possibilities, intentional ways to benefit the taxing districts, either infrastructure, buildings, Greenway Bridge, whatever it might be, who knows? That's a project level discussion.
Yeah, and I guess that's my, I just want to make sure that we're all clear what we put in here, because somebody else will come along after when the history is not here or one of us doesn't remember or whatever and say, well, this is a goal and an objective, and they might prioritize it over something else without a full understanding. That's why I want to make sure whatever we put in here is clear about what our intent is, not just so open-ended that, I mean, it can be open-ended, but just not so broad that it could go
We
off
could
track.
work on objectives within that. Again, we envision coming back with another draft on this thing.
Okay.
Uh,
I'm just bringing it up as a discussion point because maybe nobody else agrees with me. So there was that. And then also, so we expand availability of family wage housing, which is, there are definitions of housing, low income, family wage or workforce, that there are actual definitions in state statute. And I know a lot of people up here don't necessarily follow that. That's pretty, small details, but one of the things that I know from being on Urban Renewal is that when we've tried to do the projects, especially on the second level, those are so expensive that they don't pencil out without a lot of help from us. And so I want to be careful that we don't paint ourselves into a corner where we can't develop something up there that's going to be more expensive than this, because maybe that takes pressure off some other areas of housing. And we still want second story or whatever housing, but it may not be able to be low income because with interest rates the way they are, and just even the Tony's building, when we were trying to do the original construction of the apartments, they weren't willing to put in moderate income housing, even when the state offered to do the bond so that they wouldn't have to go out for the higher rate interest from their private lenders, because they wanted their private lenders. And so I just, I know it's complicated, but I just don't want us painted into a corner where we can't actually do a project that is in long-term benefit for town. So I just want to be careful about how we label that. Maybe we say housing with a preference for, but not exclude other things.
so would that be a rewording to focus on median income housing, to focus on as defined by and side?
I honestly, I don't know what the current rates are for the ones that have been developed, those couple. I don't think they fit in medium, do they? The rates on those apartments that we helped put in downtown?
No, there's a range.
Which ones?
The name is escaping me at the moment, the one above, Lilo's,
Connell.
Connell, thank
Connell
you.
Building.
I'm just saying, I don't want to paint us into a corner, is all I'm saying. It's my impression that some of those are very expensive and that had to be that way because retrofitting and all of the things that you have to do for those downtown buildings is very expensive. And now it's even more expensive because interest rates have gone up.
There is a
So,
definition, I think, of attainable housing that Mid-Columbia Economic Development District has adapted. And I probably should not cite that percentage of, it's a percentage of median
Yeah.
AMI.
Yeah.
We could reference something like that to
Yeah.
kind of narrow that down.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Or, I mean, do we just stick with housing? Just in general?
Just keep it broad.
Yeah.
That would be ultimate flexibility, sure.
and then we would decide, the board would decide on a project by project basis. I think that might
Would work.
be better.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, to the point, the idea of entertaining, affordable housing, of course, I think we can all agree we were in support of it, but there would be tax exemptions on certain properties. So, looking at your return on investment, of course, you are supporting the housing, but you would run into the issue of the whole bottom dollar. You'd be faced with a dilemma there.
Okay. Those were my points. Anything else? Anybody? No? Okay, back to you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
You have a preference among the documents?
Anybody have a preference?
I don't have a strong preference, Chair Long. I like C slightly more than D, but I would, I think echo your first concern in strike point D5 about the respective missions. I feel that we, the Urban Renewal Agency, has a mission, and the districts, separate and various districts have theirs. And we don't need to maybe kind of tangle those things up, in my opinion.
I missed some of that.
I would personally strike the support the respective missions of our various taxing districts language.
That would certainly address any concerns on it. It's fine.
I mean, we don't have to
Well-
oppose our friends and neighbors, but I think it could, going to your point, Chair, it could cause some confusion down the line or just open us up to a headache we don't need to have.
Well, I think,
Oh, sorry.
well,
Go ahead.
I think that, the gesture of being concerned about the fire district and what are their goals and objectives, I appreciate that. I think that it's pretty apparent that they want to not hand the money over to urban renewal. They want to take it and decide how it's going to be spent, and that's natural. But I appreciate that you're trying to find a way to kind of ease the overall consensus with the fire district board that they want it to sunset, and I think you're gonna have trouble convincing them to do the Second Street one or anything, I mean, perhaps if there's a break in it and they feel like they're in a lot better financial position and then you ask for a new urban renewal district, I don't know. Depends on who's on the board at that time, and it sounds like it's going to be years down the road. However, I getting the impression that when you say 2029 that probably going to run out of money before that. That's the feeling I'm getting. I'm not alarmed about that, but it just feels like that's going to happen.
The debt schedule for the current MI, maximum indebtedness, is scheduled to terminate in 2029.
Okay.
So that's just the debt payment schedule we have now on the original $29 million authorized debt for the agency. The agency, and Elaine is the expert, I'd like her to speak to this as well on the call. The agency can continue even without a district.
Okay. Yeah.
But
right.
you can have more than one district too.
Yeah.
So
If the agency's there, the district doesn't have any money, there won't be any more money allocated out to
Correct.
different projects until you have another district, right?
Correct. That's my understanding, and looking at Elaine also, and to set me straight. Elaine, go ahead.
Sometimes agencies have program income. So if you have bought a property, acquired a property, and then sold the property, that is program income. And some agencies make sure that they get program income so that they can, once tax increment revenues are terminated, they still have the ability to do some projects. And mostly those projects end up being, especially in an area like yours, which is a downtown area, helping with storefront improvement loans or different things, smaller projects, but projects to keep the downtown business community lively and vital.
Clarification. Thank you, Elaine.
So you're more familiar with the document than I am, obviously, because you put a lot of hours into this. So if maybe there is a way to somehow still put the, what we were trying to convey with, instead of saying that we want to support the missions, if there's another way to highlight that we want to be mindful of how our decisions on urban renewal impact the other agencies, maybe is what we're really trying to say. But I think it would be worthwhile to have that in there
That-
to
like
highlight
that.
that.
So I'm hearing B, or actually C so far. Is that what I'm, with that change, with those changes?
My
Mhm.
preference would be C or D, but I don't feel strongly either. So C or D works.
Yeah, and one thing with C, Dan, because I know we talked about at the last meeting, A and B are really keeps the order. It keeps it in the same order that it is. And I know we talked at the last meeting about reordering them to make it a little more of a flow. So that's what C really is it's taking a lot of them, it's taking out the redundancy, and as well as reordering it to have a better flow. So I would say if we recommended one, maybe it's C, but C or D, whichever we want to go with.
Biggest change, I think, on C is to put the emphasis on public outreach and awareness. Put that right up at the top. It was kind of farther down before.
Okay.
The other thing that I like to talk about the housing thing for just a second again, I think we need to modify if we go with C, what section is this? Section D, participation through land acquisition disposition. Item 6 under that, specify, it's very specific, right? I want to modify that to be a little bit more vague so that we can like weigh the pros and cons of the investment so that we're not losing money, or going to go down an impossible path with some of the buildings that are going to need to be restored. Yeah. So I would change it from expand the availability of family wage housing and affordable childcare to like expanding housing or residential property in general.
Yeah, I think we talked about deleting that family wage term.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And just keep it general for housing.
Yeah. Again, I think we all want to
Mm-hmm.
be able to do that, but I think we have to be very realistic at the same time.
Yeah. Elaine, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to make that same recommendation. And if you wanted to list an ABC, small ABC or something underneath that, you could put upper floor residential, including but not limited to upper floor residential, family wage housing, whatever else. You wouldn't have to do that, but to have 6 be more general just to increase housing in the area.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I think you've got some consensus on that. And 6 is actually going to be 5 because I just realized there's no 2.
Oh,
We love those auto bullets the computer puts in for us.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I think you've got a consensus, those changes in C.
Great.
Yeah, thanks for all your hard work. It's bad enough to do it once, but 4 times.
Thank
kind
you
of
for
long.
all your hard work on this. With that, I would like to turn it over to Elaine for any further changes to this and where we go from here.
If it is okay, I received some questions from your board members, and I'd like to just go through those first. Is that all right, Dan, or should we?
Absolutely, Elaine.
Okay.
Thank you. Stacy in particular, I believe you had some questions.
Okay. So the first question is, what is the best practice to share with the community the successes of urban renewal? How are other communities doing this? Frequency, method, information shared, etc. Their best practice, always that it depends on what works in your own community. So let me give you some examples. In La Grande, on every project that they do, they have a little sign up if Urban Renewal has contributed money to the project that says Urban Renewal has helped finance this project, for information go to, and then has a little reader thing that you can click on with your phone to get more information. And then once the project is completed, there is also information posted to say this project was funded through, and then it lists not only Urban Renewal, but whatever lender was involved in the project. So there's both a temporary construction sign, but a permanent sign. And that works really well for a building rehabilitation or a storefront loan or the new housing that you're talking about. So that's one way, and there are other urban renewal areas that do that also. But a lot of times I'll read articles about urban renewal, about projects happening, and I know urban renewal funded a portion of it, but it's never listed anywhere in the article. So even when you if the newspaper covers a project, like if there's a grand opening of your housing project and the newspaper covers that, you want to make sure to give them facts about that project that include the fact that there was important financing from Urban Renewal that helped cause that project to happen. So to make sure Urban Renewal doesn't just get lost as an important aspect of a project. So doing that on project specific, but also having, I know Dan is doing some work on your website, even posting, once a month or once every 2 months or something, a project, whether it's current or historical, that says, this is a project that was done with Urban Renewal, and this is the leverage amount that Urban Renewal was able to take of Urban Renewal funding versus private funding, or this was the number of jobs created, or this was the historic resource improved, or whatever was the important component of that. Just giving, maybe you do that on your Facebook, but giving people the opportunity to learn about what you've done. And I know Dan's done a lot of research in the last couple of months about things that have been done. So it probably would be fairly easy to then start incorporating that just as messages to your community about what you've done and how it's been effective. So mostly documenting and telling about your successes, letting people know. You can even, I created a number of years ago, and one of the projects that we worked on was a project, your Sunshine Meal project, but I created a number of fact sheets for the statewide organization on different urban renewal projects. And when they had that website, you could just click on those links and it would tell you information about that project. The city of Lincoln City has that kind of thing for every project that they do. So every project has its own little information page that tells about the project and what they did and what the city's commitment was, what the agency's commitment was. And they keep that in a virtual binder that you can access through their website also. So that, and if you just make that a practice of what you're doing, it's pretty easy then for people then to click on and try to find things that you've done. So those are different kinds of ideas for sharing those successes of urban renewal. The next question is, how are urban renewal agencies working to set goals for the completion of the agency? We have separate things here. I think what you've been just talking about with Dan and Joshua are goals for your agency, and those are a little bit separate than goals for a plan. So in Lincoln City, again, they have agency goals, but in their separate urban renewal plans, they incorporate maybe a portion of those goals because maybe everything isn't pertinent, and maybe have different objectives under that. So understanding if your goals are agency goals or plan goals is important. And then setting goals for completion of the agency, that's really, you're going through that process right now because you've just talked about your goals. And next meeting, you'll be talking about how much money you're really going to have left to spend through the rest of the maximum indebtedness, which isn't a lot of money. And then you're going to be comparing that to what projects you want to complete that are remaining on your list, or might be projects that we come up with or talk about tonight. So you're going to have a pretty limited group of projects left because you have a fairly limited maximum indebtedness left. So setting those goals for completion of those projects will really then be identifying which of those projects underneath those goals can get implemented first. Is there something happening that causes that to be earlier in your time frame versus later in your time frame? Is there a federal grant that you're trying to match? Is there state money you're trying to match? Is there a private developer who says he or she will move forward if you give some money? So just looking at what those opportunities are and when you think they'll happen over the next, it's not going to be a huge amount of time, next few years before you reach that maximum indebtedness. We need to remember that urban renewal is really an implementation tool. And a lot of times those goals, you have goals now from your agency that you just all agreed to. Those goals usually come from other things, from comp plans or housing action plans or downtown plans, or and usually urban renewal is what implements those other plans, makes them happen, because you actually have that funding source. So the question of how do you work to set goals for completion of the agency? You're doing it in a pretty pragmatic way by identifying your amount of money that's going to be left, seeing what's already allocated, seeing what projects you want to do, and then prioritizing those projects, and that will then let you achieve those goals that you'll have. Do you have a question about that? Next question was, what are other agencies using to measure success, completion of an agency, and how do we know if we are successful? That's a great question. I wish we had an overall answer in the state for that, but we don't. If you look at the Hood River waterfront, that was an urban renewal area. Measuring the success of that, what was creation of jobs and the development that happened, the improvement of the park. So it was just implementing actually those infrastructure projects that allowed all that development to occur. We didn't put in goals that said we want X amount of feet of commercial space or we want X number of jobs. We wanted to set the stage for development to happen. So measuring completion of that is just knowing that you've put in that street and you've put in that water line. And so it's the completion of those infrastructure projects to allow that development to occur. So it really, that question on measuring success depends on the type of district that you have and what you're trying to do. So I think it's different in every example. So in a downtown area, a lot of times that measure of success is a better atmosphere in your downtown. an area people want to go to, an area that feels safe and inviting, having more businesses, having more jobs. None of that is, having more businesses, you could track that. Having more jobs, you can track that. The safe and inviting, that's subjective, but we all know what that means, and whether you've accomplished that or not. So again, I think that differs. The next question was, for example, when is blight eliminated in our current agency? So talking about blight a little bit, the actual goal of urban renewal is not to eliminate blight. You have to have blight to establish an urban renewal agency and plan. But I think the goal more generally is to create better economic conditions, to improve the community, and maybe you do that through addressing those blighting conditions. But trying to say, when is blight eliminated? I think for your agency, the real question is, are our downtown storefronts full? Is our community getting the services in our downtown that we want them to get? Do we have an active downtown, which the upper floor housing helps provide that active downtown, that residential use in those upper floors? So I wouldn't worry too much about saying, well, when is blight eliminated? I think I would think more about, have we had successes through the improvement of our district in terms of businesses and jobs and sense of place, sense of safety. So next question, are agencies being set up now with a way to measure completion? Not necessarily. If it's another city I work with, Lake Oswego, their only project in one of their areas was the redevelopment of a road, Boone's Ferry Road in the Lake Grove part. It didn't say it wanted X number of businesses to come in, and it didn't say it wanted new housing to happen, but it knew that providing that infrastructure was going to provide a safer community and easier access to those businesses and a better environment for new businesses. So the measuring completion of that was really getting that road in, and the road's in. And then all of those other things that are happening are those side benefits of the actual construction that was able to happen within that urban renewal area. So the metrics, we talk about metrics all the time, and I think where you can establish metrics, it's helpful, but I don't think you always have to establish metrics. So you might say, okay, we want to create 100 housing units. The West Side plan that I just did in Hood River is a housing-centered plan. It's housing, transportation, and parks. But their goal is to create X number of housing units, and that is specifically stated in the plan. And I think they will measure success of that plan based on how many housing units. But the transportation part was just naming specific projects and saying, finishing those projects. And the parks part was naming specific park improvements and then being able to do or implement those parks improvements. So none of that is a definitive answer, just a roundabout of what I know and what has worked elsewhere. So any questions?
Well, kind of a question and comment. So I've kind of made a big deal out of I want to spend money on stuff that's going to add infrastructure that will wind up on the tax rolls. And that's partly because the group I represent, we all kind of have a common memory. And I think possibly we're punishing people that are not even involved anymore. But the common memory is, in order to make them not feel like this was a bad thing for the fire district, that someday when this thing is all over, they're going to jump for joy because they're going to have more money coming in because of all the infrastructure that's
Right.
now on the tax rolls. And they weren't convinced. They said, we need the money right now. We can't wait until the infrastructure is there and then the money's coming in. But the other thing that adds to their want to see this whole thing sunset is they don't believe that that has been all that successful, that the amount of projects that wind up with stuff on the tax rolls is not a lot. And I think that you have a desire amongst a lot of people to make the town look a lot better. And so there's a lot of projects that have done that. But I don't think this group of people is going to make the fire district want any more money taken away from them. And I don't expect them to jump through a bunch of hoops to make that happen. But I guess kind of my comment is sometimes when one of these is formed, people need to be careful what they promise.
I totally understand what you're saying. I have worked on nearly 200 different urban renewal plans around the state, and many of those have fire districts involved in them. And so I totally understand the perspective of the fire district. I understand the perspective that it's helpful to invest in projects that will increase assessed value, because that increase in assessed value then increases that overall taxes for everybody at the point that the urban renewal area expires. There are all kinds of different economic studies that talk about what kinds of investment help cause increased values or increased investments. There are other thoughts around if you have a strong downtown, a safe downtown, a downtown that serves your city, the property all around the urban renewal area that's not within the urban renewal area, upon which the fire district and all the other districts gain increased taxes, will grow at a higher rate because people will want to live in that community. So sometimes we need to help taxing districts understand that what's happening in the urban renewal area and the environment you're creating also helps create a better total overall environment for your city, and helps cause investment to happen in your city that may not have happened if your downtown isn't a healthy, growing, lively, clean, interesting downtown. And you can look at the tax rate increases, and I don't know those, but Nick, who's coming at your next meeting, will know those of the city as a whole, and look at those and see if those really are above a 3% increase or not. And my bet is they are, and Joshua probably knows that. But so I understand what you're saying. I also sometimes think it helps to look at the investments maybe with a different perspective in terms of what they can help create in the overall community. I also understand that I have never once convinced a fire district to change their mind about urban renewal. So
thank you. No, I appreciate the input.
Chair Long, I don't want to take us down a rabbit trail, but I do have a quick question that I feel the collective memory here could answer.
Okay.
And this might be useful for internal conversation with the fire district board, Walt, which is why I bring this up. Somebody correct or confirm for me that, well, it wasn't urban renewal. I believe the community had some collected funds through the early Google agreements to pay for the East Side Fire Station. Is that accurate? And also the training tower at the fire station?
What I remember is the city of the Dalles contributed money for the training tower. But if urban renewal is involved in that, that's news to me.
No, I'm saying my point being that that was not urban renewal, but the community has come together and invested in things that directly benefited the fire district. I feel like maybe that might be a useful thing to refresh memories on the board there, that there's been some give and take that they've benefited from.
Well, and I would say that the fact that Google is here and getting more structures on the tax rolls and stuff has eased the stress on a lot of agencies.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, and I kind of touched on this when I was talking to her, the need for the money over the past 30 years when Google wasn't here was definitely there. And it was difficult to run that agency for many, many years. And that one of the big factors that's challenging now, and maybe it's because of improperly being able to motivate volunteers, but there are no volunteer firefighters here anymore. So what that means is you need a lot more paid people in order to do the job that this community needs. And there's other factors too, but I'd say that's a main one. And, you know, I think, you know, people coming in here and going, well, gee whiz, we'd sure like to know what's going on in this community. I'd like them to know what's going on also, because I don't think the community understands a lot of this stuff. But you go to the district board meeting and there's no community there. There's no community on Zoom. There's nothing going on. And I chalk that up to the personnel go out and provide excellent service, and the people are like, we got nothing to complain about. Why would we need to know what's going on? But I want them to know what's going on. And there's also a perception, I believe, that the fire district is flush with money. And I can look at some of the things going on and go, I understand why that perception's there, you know. But my top concern, and I've expressed this recently at the fire district board, is we're short on paramedics, and I hate to be, you know, predicting bad things, but I can only see it getting worse. And I don't want to wait till the community's down there going, hey, I need a paramedic and I didn't get one.
I feel like that would be a useful offline conversation for us, because I feel that there are several areas of medical and sort of medical adjacent personnel that we might as a community invest in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Sometimes money comes from other areas in the community back when we see a need that you're short because you're contributing to urban renewal, but we know that you have needs, so we try to make that up with other funds. So, but the nice thing about our new document is that we are going to highlight both making sure the community knows what's going on and that we take into consideration impacts on other agencies, which hasn't always been the case. Hopefully you can tell the difference now. We've really worked to make that different in the last few years.
Well, it's difficult to get the public educated, and I think that's an area the fire district needs to work on. Because expecting people to show up at the board meeting so they know what's going on, that's any town USA, that's not the way it works. If you want to know, let people know what's going on, you got to work on it.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see more of that. But when you're trying to budget for public relations, you're like, we're out of money. That's one of the first places people want to go. I don't think we really need that public relations component, you know?
I think that's really true. And my input on that is what I have found is I can never really expect the public to come listen to me. And if I really want to know what they think, I need to go to them. So you go to where they are. So if there's a farmer's market and you have a booth at the farmer's market, or if there's a concert in the park, you have a booth at the concert in the park, or because especially the younger people, that's where you're going to get some interaction, is at events in your community. And yes, it takes time and it takes somebody to do that, and it takes resources. But otherwise, having people come to meetings, they just don't do it anymore. No.
Yeah.
So my other role tonight was to say, just given the goals and objectives that you just talked about, and you guys spent a substantial amount of time at your last meeting going through those, just to make sure that we've thought about if that covers really everything that you as an agency think that you want to accomplish over the next few years until you're completed. So you added two things. You added a housing objective, and you added coordinating or working or understanding better about the taxing districts. But the question I wanted to ask you is, are there other things, capital infrastructure types of things that you want in your community that you want to see developed or improved? And we don't know for sure if there's any other funding for it, but maybe it's something that Urban Renewal could fund. And so that's what I'd like you to think about a little bit. So maybe there's a specific building, which we won't name, but it's a building or a block that really needs to be improved. Maybe it's more money spent on storefront loans. Maybe it's improvements to bring families downtown. So a space that has structures in it so that families will actually come downtown and be able to eat dinner at a restaurant or whatever. But are there things that you could address through urban renewal funds that aren't presently on your list or covered, that you want to throw that idea out to be considered, to make sure, as long as you're doing a refresh, to make sure you're spending the money on the things that are the top priority of what you might need in your community?
Anyone have anything other than what we've hammered out in our previous discussions? I personally feel like we've figured that out, but if there's anything that we've missed, now's a good time to bring it up.
Went through that quite a bit was it a year ago when we really, staff really reviewed and refreshed the incentives program and talked a lot about what we want to support. Not program specific or project specific, but generally.
Mr. Wolf, you really look like you want to say something. So would you like to come forward and tell me what's on your mind real quick? That list you gave us, maybe?
The park entrance.
The park entrance?
Yeah. I helped put brick at the veterinary clinic over there at the park entrance. The intersection is 3rd and 4th and 6th. And a young girl was involved in a fatal accident right there. And I thought when I got out of the Navy, by the time I got out, that wall would be fixed. And it hurts some of us. But it would be nice to have more of a presentation, to walk across the bridge right there. And I just came from there. I took a picture of the retaining wall situation right there that's missing. I walked there. It's a real eyesore. And it's things like that that all of us see. We stop there. Oh, we all do. And the obvious should be, is what I'm saying, the obvious should be addressed. Because that's a safety, and everybody wants to say safety, I understand, but there is an 8-foot drop off right there where that wall's been chipped off by a front of a car.
Okay.
And I talked with the steelworks guy out there by Big Jim's, and he said that he would have a look at it and he may have something that would match. I know that the city or the Parks and Recreation got involved on the retaining wall at the city park, and it's the same railing system and the same retainer as the location I'm speaking of. And some of you may know exactly what I'm talking about. But when we see something like that, or if we see 20-foot sections of gutter hanging off of a building, or a 15-foot section of downspout hanging off a scupper of a restaurant over a table, we get discouraged. We get discouraged, and that, in my understanding, is blight. Other than in the building trades, I thought blight had to do with plants, but there is blight around town, there's retaining wall at the, that's going to be taken out with the new purchase of the used car lot down there that, there's eyesores and there's safety issues. It took me 2 weeks to figure out who put the face print in the guardrail down at the marina. It was like the devil's triangle to get something done down there. I went to 5 different places and found out that the port, the ODOT, the city, the state police, it ended up being there like that for 2 years because the woman didn't have insurance. And we need stuff like that taken care of. That's what I'm saying. And my main pet peeve is that wall over there going into the city park. It seems that we could have a crown or something to really address. It's a beautiful walk across that bridge.
Okay.
And it's really an asset to the community. I spent a lot of time at that natatorium.
Okay, thanks. So I think that's outside of our boundary. However, we can talk with Parks and Rec and some other people. And I would say anytime you have something like that, just you can always bring it forward to the city manager and he can direct you to the appropriate agency or the correct department within the city. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Anybody have any other things they want to add maybe to the list?
I would just say, Mr. Wolf, feel free to reach out. I'm on the Parks and Rec board, so happy to chat with you about that.
Okay, that looks like we're feeling pretty good about the list at this point.
So I think where we go from here is at your next meeting, Nick Papanik from Tiberius Solutions will be here to work through some financial information with you. And then once you understand the financial status and we look at your commitments and what other projects you might undertake, you'll look at creating kind of that action plan for completing your agency within your maximum indebtedness.
Exactly.
So Dan and Joshua, if you have other comments there.
At the February meeting, following up on that, we will have the agency audit. We'll have the annual fiscal report, which is a standard annual report that comes out every toward the end of every January. And then going into the much more comprehensive analysis of what does the agency actually accomplish, questions of return on tax value, things of that nature, that likely will carry over into the March meeting. There are about 5 different major components in the scope of work involved in that, and there's quite a bit of research involved in that. And then going into the March meeting for project specific, identifying specific projects. With that, I think we're probably closing in on it here on this item. Appreciate your work. Elaine, we will see you again in March, probably in April. Thank you very much. And I think that closes it up on this particular item.
Okay, great. So now we're going to move on to the Gitchell update discussion.
Hi, I'm Ann Moorhead. I'm Special Projects Coordinator at the City of the Dalles. And I'm going to talk us through the Gitchell Building Light Projection Project for your funding consideration. So the Gitchell building is our oldest commercial building here in the Dalles. It was originally called the Waldron Brothers Drug Store, as it was a pharmacy originally. It was also a lot of other things over its life, including a post office, Percy L. Manser Sign Company, the Astoria Navigation Company ticket office, and home of one of the first newspapers in Eastern Oregon, the Weekly Mountaineer, later called the Times Mountaineer. So it's had a lot of lives over the time it's been here. And it's been here all the way since 1867. So it's a lot of time to go through a lot of different things. It survived the Great Fire of 1891 and the flood of 1894, and was eventually renovated into the Gitchell Apartments in the 1920s and 30s, which is how it got the second name that it's most known by. So overall, it contains a lot of history that has gone over here in the Dalles. Currently, the building stands in its original location right on First Street, which used to be the center of commerce in the Dalles in the late 19th century. But it has been kind of left unmessed with for a little while, and has been considered by Restore Oregon, which is a nonprofit which focuses on historic preservation and cultural preservation of buildings. It's considered by them to be a critically endangered landmark due to all the things it suffered, in the physical condition. So, when we presented them with this project, they were really excited for the possibilities it opens up, and also offered a letter of support, which you can see in the staff report for this project. So the project itself would include the installation of a 4-meter tall pole. You can see it's right next to the road there. It would hold 6 projectors on the top and would cycle through 3 layers of the ghost signs. So the ghost signs are those faded advertising signs. There's the owl cigar sign in the far background. There's this red storage sign on the right, and there's the black insurance and storage on the top, the banner over everything. And so these projectors would basically restore and cycle through these restored versions of these 3 ghost signs at night when it's dark enough. And the pole itself would connect to the existing electrical line, which runs through the landscaping next to the road and provides power for the existing street side park lights. So another piece that is not included in this picture, but it would be just about to the right of what you can currently see in it, is an informational signage, which would also be included to really talk about the building, its history and significance, as well as the project itself, to really explain what exactly we're really trying to do here and really drive home the point we're making and pushing for this historic restoration. So to get a little bit more technical for just a moment, the projectors themselves are an idea created by Craig and Jessica Winslow of the Winslow Studios. They're really a pioneer to this program, and have been doing this since, I believe their pilot program was in Astoria, Oregon. They've done it a number of times, so they've gotten pretty confident in it, but it's still such a rare thing that hasn't been done by a lot of people that we would really be a unique specimen to have a city that has a project like this in our downtown area. So the Winslow Studios would create a custom installation for us. They would restore the signs and create custom plates, which would then go into a backlit projector. So the projector itself wouldn't project just like a computer would, but would project just one like white light behind a colored screen that is custom made to restore our signs. And then essentially 2 projectors would cover each sign. And so it would phase between them every night. And so these projectors are made, relatively simple and as hardy as possible so that they can withstand the elements. They contain a protective covering as well as their own atmospheric control, like a fan, which would really protect them in cases of more extreme weathers, hot and cold, and allow them to last a really long time, giving them an expected lifespan of about 10 years. We also enter into a maintenance contract with the Winslow Studios for the project to ensure if something goes wrong, we can deal with that then. So this installation would bring the signs back to life in the dark, transforming it from what it is, and you can see it's kind of dark and dreary, to what it could be and what it has been in the past. And so you can see that on the right with what he's done with a previous project of his. So this transformative project is a one-time strategic investment on a brilliant, unique, and non-invasive restoration project, which would preserve the history of this building and draw attention to the building, reactivating it, making it a cultural icon that is attractive and productive part of the Dalles urban fabric, drawing both community and visitor attention, and meeting goals B and C of this agency. It is also positioned near I-84, and the project would be a visual draw for interstate users while also improving the visual appearance of First Street, which is being reconstructed through a separate urban renewal project, and which also meets goal I of this agency. Furthermore, it increases night lighting around Lewis and Clark Park and contributes to the enhancement and maintenance of the public spaces by revitalizing the area and fosters a more vibrant and visually appealing urban environment, which meets goals K and city comprehensive land use plans, goal 9, economic development, goal 8. Through all this, the Gitchell building, which is often forgotten and left to simply be, is poised to become a cultural and tourism icon, embodying the vision outlined by the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Goals and the Dallas Comprehensive Land Use Plan, and would really allow us to tap into the allure of the ghost signs and historic buildings to complement the Dallas' current emphasis on the region's rich history to really revitalize this currently underused piece of property right alongside our downtown area. So to go over what that would mean funding wise, the total cost of this project is $24,400. You can see the total cost breakdown on the right. Less than 1/4 of the total funds would be spent on the sort of peripherals, the pole, as well as the connecting electrical, a concrete pad to anchor the pole, along with miscellaneous construction materials to help with that process. The larger chunk of more than 75% would go toward the artist fee, which can then be divided into 3 portions. Just over half would be spent to the artist for equipment. This includes the projectors themselves, the custom-made plates that would allow it to be restored, along with the mounting and the shipping and so forth. The darker purple on the right side of that figure, that's just under half, would be the studio fee, which goes toward the artist for his labor, expertise, experience, and travel, and so forth. And the last small piece of the pie, $850, would go specifically toward also having him create a bronze informational plaque to, again, really drive home the point of this project, explain what it is, and explain the real importance of this building to our community and our history. So the budget implications of this amount, the approved budget for the urban renewal capital project funds in the fiscal year of 2023 to 24 is $2,583,382, or just over $2.5 million. This project costing only $24,400 is less than 1% of that total budget, meaning there's sufficient budget for this and other projects. So, whoops. Our board alternatives, staff recommends the agency move to authorize the agency manager to execute and implement the Gitchell Building Light Protector project with Windows Studio in an amount not to exceed $24,400. But other options are also in the staff recommendation packet or up on the board if you'd like. And at this point, I'll move on to the phase for questions.
Questions? Yes.
One of my questions was, who will administer project and oversee content? And that was answered with the Winslow group.
Yes, they're the ones we'd be hiring to do this, and
Right.
I would be on the city side.
Who will maintain and pay ongoing costs associated with operations?
The only expected ongoing costs would be the cost of electrical, as well as possible maintenance costs, and the city would handle both of those, it being in a city park. The city would then take responsibility for the further costs.
So then it becomes city property?
Yes.
Do the projectors have a dual purpose? Can they be accessed online, or can you project anything besides what is prepared?
No, as mentioned, it is just a white light essentially that will project whatever is in that template. And what that template is just going to be restored versions
Right.
of the signs and what we initially set it up to be.
Okay, understood.
Mhm.
Hack into it.
Yeah.
No, I was looking for
Go ahead.
possibility of, like on the weekends, having old films shown on there, or, where you have other activities in the park and that would
Mhm.
support that.
Mhm.
Are there other options available besides the 3 historical ads that would go up? Could there be other kind of historical related things with the dowels that we could use, or is that kind of a future, maybe in the future we could do that?
So as far as projecting goes, the point of this project has really been to recall back to the historic aspect of the building. You can see that in the slides that should be added to the packet that were originally given by the artist, he has a further option, like the option 3 essentially, which would be a projector option. But then you're looking at 2 times the cost, and he would have ongoing support for changing out what might go on there. I still don't know if it's the point where we could do old movies or if it's more like a preset, kind of animations. But again, we'd be looking at least about double the cost. And that's really not what we were kind of focusing on with this project.
Well, then I was also looking at who controls the content, and you've answered that, but that would be like if you're coming in, welcome to the Dalles, in maybe an old type of font, but something that would add that you could put on in the sequence when you're rotating slides. Do they rotate or do they just stay stagnant?
They essentially, the way it works is essentially that there are, based on the bid, 6 different projectors, and there's essentially 2 projectors per sign. So they would fade in and out. So one would be on and then the next, so on. We can change it to have a layer that says, welcome to the Dalles. That would just cost 2 more projectors or whatever.
I see. One other thing is that if we had some input from local historians, like we have one here, where we could research and perhaps add something like that to the content. That's what I was thinking about.
Or
Right.
shots of our murals.
Shots of the murals. It could be other, as you have, it's captive audience going by on the freeway. It's a wonderful way to advertise and get people to stop.
Right. We also can't be too captive because
Oh,
it is a road.
Yeah, well, people are walking.
But
Understand that.
yeah, I think part of it is this project is really a way to catch someone's interest and get them looking into more about our town. Like they see it off the interstate, they come check us out, they look at our website. We have all that information between us and Explore the Dalles. It's out there, and we want to get people interested and curious so that we can draw them in and just keep hold of them.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I think you're getting us curious and drawn in. So,
Right.
There's some initial success right there.
Hear it?
This is projected to last 10 years, or that's the estimate?
That is the estimated lifespan is 10 years.
What's the future? What's the potential future of the building going forward at large? Like, is it going to be standing in 10 years?
Well, I can't fully speak to that, Dan.
We've done, and I'll turn over to Josh as well, but just going from recollection of my own time on council, we've done structural analysis. We put a new roof on the building some years back. It is not suitable for occupancy, certainly. 10 years from now, it'll be there, structurally sound that way. 50 years from now, there are certainly questions about the future of the building. It's on railroad right away. Okay, that's a challenge.
Yep.
But in the meantime, what do we do with it for at least the foreseeable future? I think I'm comfortable certainly with a 10-year horizon. I wouldn't be comfortable with a 50-year horizon.
Well, the Baldwin is part of the retaining wall. That's a concern with the First Street project. Is this building also part of that retaining wall?
That's been taken into account, I know, in the engineering for First Street.
It's not part of the first, the retaining wall from First Street doesn't touch this building.
Thank you.
It's on the other side, excuse me, the other side of the railroad tracks.
I see.
Yeah. And are there still ongoing negotiations over what to do with the building? I know that there are a lot of people in the community looking to raise funds to do something with that. Is that still, Eric, is our community members still hoping to do something with this if they have given enough time to raise funds, et cetera, and put a proposal together?
Oh, yeah. So this is Eric Gleason, 704 Case Street, The Dalles. I'm here representing the Friends of the Waldron Brothers Drugstore. Yeah, we're still active in the community and still actively working to partner with the city for the long-term future of the building. We recognize that there are challenges with reusing it and challenges with it in the future, but we don't see any of those challenges as being insurmountable. And we see this project as being kind of a good initial first step to kind of make the building and its history more visible in the community. And then we hope to partner with the city to start doing other exterior restoration work. Like you can see, the windows are boarded up and stuff. Behind those boards, the original windows still exist. And so we'd like to, once the building is safe to gain access in there, remove the windows, restore the windows, and put them back in. And I think that we're working towards that with the city. So
Great.
I personally know the paint that's on the front will last many years.
yeah.
Right. Yes.
My only other question is, were there any similar alternatives and whatnot, just from like a cost perspective, to sort of make sure that we're in, like I'm used as a government contractor, we got to bid out like 3 or 4 different suppliers, vendors, that kind of thing. So I'm just curious if this seems like a unique thing. But
Yeah, I did some research into others that could provide similar. I think you're talking specifically about this kind of projection project. I looked into others that could possibly provide this, and as far as all my research could find, there was simply no one who could provide us with both the projection ability at this scale and in this area, and also could do that sort of mural restoration. They're just that amount of overlap I couldn't find with anyone else.
It's like a pretty nominal cost to me. Does so.
Very unique, right? There's only like 40 or 50 of these in the country.
I don't even think it's that many.
Yeah.
It's pretty, I mean, yeah. There's actually one in Canada too. It's not just this country. They are global.
Hey. It's pretty exciting. Right. Or questions, if there are questions, or make a motion.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Looking for the.
I read it, but I don't remember the packet number. So
Look into, I almost have it.
You want a motion?
Yes.
Okay, I would move to authorize the agency manager to execute and implement the Gitchell Building Light Projector Project with Winslow Studio in an amount not to exceed 24,400 as presented.
Have a second?
Bet. McLaughlin seconds.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
All right. And with that, I think we're ready to go on to the next agenda item.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry. I was kind of trying to figure out which one of you is going to speak.
Okay. Thank you. So the Tony's Building, one of our favorite topics. We all know it well. So as a refresher, back in October, we presented the idea of a request for proposals that had a number of specific elements in that. The idea being that we would send out advertise a request for proposals to do to the development community and move forward with a structure on the Tony's site. Some of the elements included residential housing, commercial, other potential uses there. There was some concern expressed at that meeting about potential competition with one other particular major housing development the agency is involved in. And so direction to the staff at that time was to hold off, put it in abeyance, at least for a while. At that time, though, we staff suggested that we would like to come back and come forward with some additional ideas. So that's what we're here doing right now. We wanted to put some other suggestions before you to see if we could gain some additional guidance on Tony's. Right now it is vacant. It's filled in with gravel, security fencing around it. Question being, do we leave it in that status, or do we do something, whatever something might be, to put it back into some use? We could go with a very active use, go out with another RFP, maybe take housing out of it. Another option, request for expressions of interest. This is a less intensive, particularly from a developer standpoint, approach to this. An RFP requires typically a developer to put quite a bit of investment into proposals, business models, architectural diagrams, engineering, things that really take a project a lot of the way toward going toward a competitive bid for construction. Request for expressions of interest is a more general approach. We simply advertise to the development world that we have a parcel available, that it's a potential for development, and we do more of basically a marketing piece for the community at large. Here's what downtown the Dalles is, the historic legacy of the city, location on the river, things of that nature. Now potential developers, what might be possible with this site. So it's a very general approach. Those are not the only two options, of course, in the board packet before you. We talk about perhaps it's a parking lot. Perhaps it's integrated with Federal Street Plaza in some way. Perhaps it's land banked. So we are maintaining present status and keeping it open for the future, whenever that might be. So we really wanted to keep this dialogue going so we don't simply let it default to its current position and just not come back to it. So really kind of fair warning, if there's no direction tonight, I'm going to keep on coming back and bugging you, because we're looking at the better part of $1 million investment for the over the course of that. You have one figure in there, I think it's 800,000 roughly in the staff report. That doesn't count some of the ongoing costs. When we had the Tony's building, we were paying to heat that building for several years, so it stacks up. So going back, or one thing I missed, parcel sale. That would be another possible thing to think about. It's certainly an attractive commercial site downtown. We could put it on the market. We'd come back to you with an appraised value and see what might happen there. I think the only other option I missed on here was what else might be out there, and that's a question for all of you. Other things we're missing? Is there some other use for that? Could it be some sort of a downtown attraction? Maybe, who knows what it might be. Farmers market comes to mind. Maybe it's some other physical structure entirely that would help draw people off of the freeway. Who knows? And I'll throw it back at you.
So I have a quick question. Cost of marketing, what would that entail and what would we expect?
Cost of, I missed it.
Marketing, if we went to a plan to put together something and put it out there to see what investors or developers would be interested in, there would have to be some advertisement, some contact. I don't know I'm looking at the cost to do that.
Sure. We would come back to you with an estimate on that. In that case, I think we probably would go out to seek some competitive bids. There'd be a publication, there'd be a brochure that we would produce. So we'd work with a designer on that one, advertising costs, things of that nature. In your packet, there was I think it was the City of Talent that provides one example. We could easily track down a cost estimate for that one if we wanted to go that route. Any of these, we'd come back with a cost estimate for you.
One other thing we need to be cognizant about was when Mary Hanlon was here, and we're talking about developing other residential in downtown. So that would be competitive. And so we just have to be aware of that. But the uses have to be compatible with our marketing plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. so we don't shoot ourselves in the foot, which we tend to do a lot of in the Dalles over the last 50 years. Sometimes we don't always look at the direction and what the impact is going to be.
One other element, an important element I think that comes to mind is the Main Street Group, asking them for their
I
thoughts.
like that.
And the beautification committee as well.
Yes, definitely.
I'm,
Who are working together.
I'm personally in favor of possibly looking at marketing and seeing what would be a proposal from outside. I'm also looking for something that would be attractive from the freeway. Something that would produce revenue. And of course, it would need to support activities for our community. I'm hearing, we're all getting mailings about the use of the land there, that developing a park or green space. A lot of folks support that idea, and I'm not opposed to it, but I just like to look at a smorgasbord and, have the ability to pick the best of what it could be used for. So that's marketing, yes. Sale, I don't know about that one. Possibly, but let's get a list of potentials, options.
Okay, so that's your input. I know you have some because you've called me.
Thank you. Yes, sure. I think I would lean towards the RFEI, which I think is what you're talking about, to the expressions of interest, the marketing approach, with some criteria or parameters that we include in that. So expressions of interest that are serious and useful and appropriate for the site. I'm going to actually correct. I think my understanding, Councilor McLaughlin, is that we could have our cake and eat it too. We could have a plaza space at the current Federal Street block and build something on the Tony site.
A dual purpose. Yeah.
So that would be the way I would personally like us to be thinking, and some of those criteria might be complements a future Federal Street plaza, increases downtown foot traffic, complements existing or planned major developments. Both ideas have tenants in hand or major tenants in hand, and tax benefits.
All elements, and we could put together, depending upon other guidance tonight, perhaps an outline of what something like that might look like.
What are other people thinking? I want to make sure we get everybody's thoughts on the table.
I recall talking about this before, and I'm certainly okay with trying to make sure that we don't do anything that's going to interfere with the other project with the Basalt Commons thing, and understand, the desire to make sure it fits the area. And we talked a little bit about, well, can we specify the uses of it? And I'm not saying we can or can't, but I'm okay with just kind of holding on to it until some of these other things are a little bit more decided, I guess I'm thinking if the Salt Commons definitely is built, it's there. The cities decide what they're going to do with Federal Street, and you put the thing on the market. If the purchase of the property is not restricted, I would think you get more money out of it. They get to do with it what they want. But if your top concern is, well, we don't want them to do what they want, we want them to do something that's going to fit in with everything else, then you're still going to want the restrictions. So if you want to go ahead and try to sell it now with the stipulations that has to meet our criteria, I'm okay with that.
I'm definitely in support of the RFEI. Also very much in support of the Federal Street Plaza being a part of that. And I would not want to see us limit ourselves. I understand, respecting what the Basalt Commons is trying to do, but also don't want to limit our focus too much. If we're putting out an RFEI and someone comes back with a great opportunity for more housing, I would be in favor of that. So that's the direction I'd like to see us go.
Yeah, I'd second the housing piece and even doing a mixed, like potentially a mixed use of residential with some sort of like public space to close off the street between First and Second. I think that that would probably be a good mix. And I personally, I feel competition is like a really good thing. We have a lack of residential housing, and I'm not concerned at all about like there being more available. Um, so I think that the RFEI is particularly interesting, but I'm also like very interested in what the value of that parcel is, and not just the immediate upfront revenues that we would get from potential sale of the parcel, but I'm also concerned or interested in knowing what the potential was for tax revenues over a period of time, because we need to recoup that. It's actually a little over $1 million, if I'm not mistaken, because on the Urban Renewal Budget Committee last year, I remember the recommendation was closer to like $750,000 just for the demolition alone. So if you count that plus the cost of the initial buy in 2016, it was for like a little over $400,000.
420.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we're well over $1 million on this project, and I'd like to see if we can recoup some of that. Maybe it is some sort of like mixed use public space, but somebody buys the parcel and puts in like apartments on it or something.
I think the only downward adjustment, I believe there was a $60,000 grant that we eventually got from
Oh,
EQ,
Yeah.
but still $1 million.
yeah.
Yeah, Business Oregon contributed 60,000, even though said they were gonna fund 500,000, but we got 60,000 out of them. But also we budgeted 750 to do the demo and abatement, and it came in much less. It came in
Oh,
at
cool.
like, I think it's at like 450.
Yes.
Oh, wow,
So
okay.
it's right
Yeah, I
around
couldn't
there.
remember the final.
Yeah, so it's just, and then we had the archaeological. So I mean, we're sitting at about 500,000. So we're 250 under what we had budgeted for. So
Cool.
yep.
That's good news.
Sure.
But still a sizable investment.
Not to put you on the spot, but I'm curious if you don't know, maybe we can connect another time. But I'm curious that the example of the RFEI you gave us from Talent is from 2017. So I'm a little curious to see how that worked out and if they were successful in that development.
What was the question? I'm sorry. What was the result of that?
Yeah, so that was a 2017 RFEI. I was just kind of curious if that was successful. or
Very
not.
good question. I don't know, but I'll find out. Thank you.
Did you?
I hope it led to a positive outcome. We'll find out.
Yeah, I had some thoughts. I guess my main thought is just leaving it there in an as-is condition is in my opinion not a good thing. It doesn't look good now. It doesn't look good to have a vacant, fenced lot in your downtown area. I don't think that's attractive. I think it kind of degrades from the whole thing. So my general thing is we need to do something. We need to try to do something. We need to try. And my next kind of thought is it's going to be driven, in my opinion, from the private sector.
Mhm.
Someone needs to see value in that. Someone needs to see a need in the community. Someone needs to step forward and propose a project on that. So I actually, I think Mary Hanlon had some good comments. And what my thinking is that we just need to be very straightforward about that. My thinking is actually just proceed with an RFP. I think the RFEI is a lot of work, possibly a lot of expense, and I'm not sure it's us marketing the project. I'm not sure we need to do that. I think we need to just throw this out there and say, here's the opportunity, here's the parcel. Be very straightforward about the concerns. We are concerned about this. We're not sure there's, whatever it is that like Mary's comments that she made, just put those in there. Say that's, so when we evaluate the proposals, that's going to be part of what we evaluate. Like if you come in and you have a 100-unit residential thing, probably not going to really fly. So give them some insights on how to do that. But I think to me, that's the easiest, quickest, least expensive way to find out, is there some private sector interest out there to do something with that parcel in its given condition? That's my personal opinion. But the bottom line is we need to do something, and to just let it sit there fence around it, fenced off lot in downtown is not helping this community at all. It's not helping us. It's not helping anybody.
That's exactly why we're asking this question. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so my thoughts on this were that I like the request for expressions of interest because it is less expensive for people to put forward their proposals for us to take a look at. It also gives us a really great opportunity to involve the community and let them see what came in and see what their feedback is. It'd be a great time for some kind of town hall, basically. This could also be a really good opportunity to sort of roll out our new PR, which is some signage explaining what happened there, why we had to tear it down, and what we're doing next, what our next steps are. And that there's a chance for community involvement. And even if you do like a QR code, so you could go to they could go to a website, which you could continuously update with what's going on. And that itself would also attract people who had ideas for what could go there, I think, because a lot of times they're with a real estate agent looking around versus just looking on a website for who's requesting proposals. And then the other thing that I was thinking, what was it? There was one more thing. Oh, just that it's going to take a long time to break ground or do anything. So we have some really great opportunities, especially if there's signage on it. So Cherry Festival, if that's something that the chamber wants to look at, farmers markets, we can be doing that in the meantime. Because as we know with Mary's project, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a couple of years, pretty much anything we try to do there. So we need some short-term ideas so that it doesn't look dead and just empty, which it looks really great with the fence, by the way. It looks sharp and intentional, like we didn't just like raise the building.
Yeah.
But I think we could kind of hit a lot of the things that we're trying to do and show people that downtown is different. And this is a big deal, what goes on that corner. It's our last big spot downtown.
We can reach out to Lisa to coordinate some events.
Yeah.
I look
And
also
there
at
might be
Richard.
other people that have interests that we don't even know about who would do something, music or who knows what, if they know it's available.
Your mention of the QR code just to solicit public opinion, I really have to give credit to Richard over here. He's been hitting the streets hard, and the papers that he had up here earlier demonstrate people voting on different ideas and bringing them forth. And
Yep.
it's a great way to generate.
Sure.
This is one that I want to.
Okay, come up and use the mic.
This is them. This is us. These people, there was 50 of these and there's 35 here that was returned. They love the town. And some of them hate it. And they still filled it out.
Yeah.
They love it. They don't know what's going on and they want to know. And each one of these, I pass these out to y'all. And it was open for their ideas also. And they're in here also. So this was done like 3 times.
Mhm.
And as Scott mentioned, the parking lot with the fence around it, something's got to be done. There's a man that's really involved in interest in 4 courts of pickleball. And he wants it to be enclosed. But I'm going to suggest an overlay of the gravel, if anything at all, for a common space. The plan's going to have to evolve, but there's only, out of these 3 pages, there's only 5 things on here that the public disagreed with. And the parking lot was disagreed with twice on here. I accidentally put it on here twice. But the museum surprised me. I really like the idea for the museum, you know, and we need to listen to them. You know, they have a right to be heard, damn it.
Absolutely.
And I asked them not to come because I really wanted to hear what you guys have to say. There's about 8 of us that sifted out of this, but all of these people really love this town. And there's some great ideas in here. And something could be done right away and at low cost. And one of them would be to do an overlay of that, not a drive-on situation, but the dust downtown, the microfibers, the micro dust, just stuff blowing around, chain link fence. Nobody wants a chain link fence. So focusing on what we don't want is probably the big one.
Sure.
And
Well, we're taking one step at a time, and this is fabulous research that you've done all on your own, and I really appreciate you.
I want to offer what I can do to help and by reaching out and if there's anything that I can do to help. And I ask for guidance, and I know when I'm not following it. And I feel like I did the right thing, and I appreciate what you've had to say. And I personally really appreciate you all. It's a heart thing for me.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll make sure staff gets that and then share the information with us. It's great. Okay. So what are you guys feeling? Do you feel like we have a consensus, or, I mean, there were several different thoughts, so.
I feel we have a consensus. Do you?
I think we have enough
Direction?
guidance to come forward. Whether it's an RFEI or an RFP or blurring the lines between the two some way that
Mhm.
cover both of those. You know, there are different levels of information we put into it, but if we can come back with a draft February.
I don't think we need a motion. I think they just, staff needs consensus
That's what they
to.
were asking.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
He's
I
like,
get ahead of you there. Sorry about that. Mhm.
yeah.
Hmm.
Well, and we've got several things on the agendas, and we've got budget committee meetings coming up. So yes, we want to move forward, but we
I'll
got
take back
staff.
that February comment. How about that?
So,
Yeah, I think, to the point of Dan, you mentioned, I think, this RFEI, RFP. I think though, it's kind of one or the other. If RFP is asking for a lot more information, it's asking for something that probably we need to decide on of what to include in that RFP to make it, to get the best applicants we can get. The RFEI really opens it up to let them think about it and let them give us those ideas. And in a way, we then take the idea and do an RFP to develop it.
mhm.
So it would take a bit more time, but I think with the RFP, we would need a little bit more. Maybe, we could do the QR code idea of, a fence alongside the Tony site, let it be up for a couple months, get the idea from the community. What would you like to see here? You snap the QR code. A simple, action takes you to fill out your suggestion. We can then take those suggestions and figure out, go through them, figure out if that's something we want to include in our RFP. But the RFEI is really putting it out to the private developers to give us those ideas. So it's an additional step, an additional cost. So I think that would be my suggestion, is trying to choose if it's an RFP or an RFEI, which way we'd want to go. Or both.
I think I agree with Scott that I think it's important to be very decisive with this, because the longer that sits there, people are going to be concerned with like what's going on with it. I don't know. I really would like to better understand the value of the lot and to consider selling it, but then also consider putting an RFP together to develop it. And I think a mixed use, with some sort of building with like commercial and residential that matches the rest of like downtown businesses and whatnot with the second floor residential units. Like that would be my preference, and then mix in the idea of a public space, / plaza next to it in conjunction with it. And yeah, I don't know. I think that it's important to be very decisive about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like it's important not to just leave it there, which is part of the reason I'm suggesting some signage and some interaction. But one of the things that we learned when we tried to develop the Granada block is that when the interest rates and things go crazy, people are not going to put forward proposals or going to have a very limited option. And this is a really key piece of downtown, which I think we shouldn't get in such a hurry that we cut off our nose to spite our face. Like, I'm more concerned about it being the right thing that's going to be there. My whole concept of being able to build something is that it's going to last 50 years or however long, that it's not like a short-term thing. And, I just worry that if we get in a hurry with interest rates being like they are, it's going to really limit what people can put forward at this point. And so I feel like, yes, it does take longer to break ground if you do the RFEI, but it also gives people more time to digest it and think of a good idea, and then have the community see that something is going on, but taking our time and getting it right the first time.
Almost a two-step process for FBI to gather and filter community visions. It becomes an outreach function.
Well, potentially in a RFEI, if we like the person proposing it, right, they're going to propose and they're going to be the person we're judging whether or not they can complete that project. Then you can almost go, I think, I'm not an attorney, but I think you could go to the DDA step where you're like, okay, here was your proposal, and this is like, we'll work together to figure out what you're bringing to the table and what we're bringing to the table. You almost don't need the RFP at that point. But the problem with the RFP is that it does require them to bring so much to the table, like almost a ready-made project. And I don't think people are out there with ready-made projects right now just looking for a piece of land, because it's expensive. I mean, if I was a builder, I might have an idea. I mean, this is more your thing. You build, but or manage projects, but
Yeah, I guess my concern with the other one is that we're just like, I mean, I'm not sure. I guess the question was what happened to that other one, or what happened to other ones? Are they successful? Do they work? Do they get responses to them? Because to me, it's like, as a builder developer, it's like, I don't want to do a bunch of work as well to give you a bunch of information for you to come back with an RFP, to me have to do an RFP anyway. Because I'm not sure, but maybe I'm not understanding. I've not seen that in the development world very much, but maybe it's out there, maybe it's successful. But I would be concerned about making, because you could get all this input. Oh, we should do this, that, and the other. And the developer's like, yeah, good luck. Well, I'm not doing it for you. I do this for you. I can do this. I can make this project work. And it definitely is an issue with interest rates in the market, but that's why they'll have to determine, we're not going to tell them what they can do. We're just saying, here's a piece of property. We can put as little parameters on it as we want and let them tell us what they think they can do with the property. That would be my approach, to leave it as open as, be honest. I mean, the issues that Mary brought up are real issues. And I think we would want to bring that up, because as us evaluating the project, that would be something that would be on our mind, but keep it open. Like, what do they want to do? How would they want to do it?
When you receive the RFP, you can look it over and say, we're not going to go that route without really having any solid reason. Just doesn't seem to fit what we're looking for.
What's that?
If it's an RFP, we can still say,
oh yeah,
no.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point.
They're not going to be able to say, well, we met all your criteria. Why are you saying no? Just because we just decided to say no.
Yeah, I think we need to be very careful about putting a bunch of criteria in there. I mean, we put in some information, they have to consider it, and then they come back to us. We still get to make a decision whether we want to go down the road with this, that, or the other one.
I think you may be describing what I have in mind for an RFEI. I think we might
Okay.
be talking about roughly the same thing.
Okay.
I'd like to at least, number one, find out what happened with talent
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
and come back with the bulleted elements, whatever you prefer to call it, as an RFP, RFEI. It might end up being the same.
Ultimately, we have a
RFEI.
piece of property that we want someone to make an investment in, to put tax, value in our market and create some opportunities. We're not sure what they are, but ends have to meet somehow. I mean, it's not going to be a project that is a loser. They're not going to do it. So it's going to have to be something that makes sense.
Somehow capturing the elements that we'd like to be reflected, at least broadly, on that, talking to some of how does it complement the community?
Yeah.
I use the term criteria, and maybe that's not the quite the right term, because I think we're kind of saying the same thing in parallel. You said, let's be clear, which is what I was trying to drive at, whether it's RFEI or RFP. I'm not sure it matters to me that much, but having some thoughts. How are we going to, broadly, how will we evaluate something, right? And if we throw it out to the public and say, what do you think? We're going to get all sorts of responses that may or may not be immediately helpful. People will say, you should build an Applebee's. Well, cities don't build Applebee's, right?
But an RFEI isn't just, I mean, it has minimum criteria that somebody would have to, it's not just like shoot us your brainstorm. That would be like the QR code or something, but it would have to be more well thought out than that. Sort of like Sunshine Mill was our first project, and nobody knew what they wanted to do with that. So it was like a request for interest or something like that. And people just said, hey, I would do this with it. And then they went from there after people gave ideas about what to do with it. I mean, that's kind of what I would like to see, is that without forcing people to go down the road of getting all their numbers and, just something that's, and if we like the concept, then they can go through the next steps.
Yeah, and I think you can make the RFP whatever you want. You don't have to make it extreme detail of a full project development either, necessarily. I think you can do it more generally and make it easier for them to respond. I think the key thing is going to be whatever it is, like what kind of response do we get, right? So, I mean, my hope would be whatever the tool is, we get a lot of interest and response, because I think that would be the challenge. I think my concern is that we don't get much response or at all. So I think that's why I want to be more general and say, what do the developers out there think that, I mean, we can say no, we can always put the brakes on and say that doesn't fit what we want at all. But if we get no responses, then it doesn't matter what we put out there, because, we will have nothing to choose from.
It's essentially the first time we did for the Tonys after the first thing fell through. We had 3 proposals, and then it turned out that the building wouldn't support any of them. So it's roughly the same concept, right? I mean, except there's no building now.
There is certainly interest in the site right now. Just informally, 3 or 4 different people. Yeah, maybe I want to do something with that when you get to pull the trigger on something. So it's out there.
But we don't want people to tie it up and then not do anything for a long period, which is what happened before.
Needs
So
to be performance standards in whatever we do. Evaluation standards, performance standards, guarantees.
I don't want them to say, yeah, I'll lock down the land and then wait until interest rates are better before I do anything. I mean, that's something, because then we have an empty lot that we don't have control over. You have enough?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have enough instruction and then some?
I have got a lot of direction here, and I'm going to come back to you with something.
Okay.
It might not be in February, though.
Yeah, no.
Now we
But
understand.
but we would like to, and I think it's expressed here, we're not going to put this on the back burner. It's, and we have the strategic planning that we're doing. Next meeting is going to be busy. It could spill over into March of, 2 very busy meetings coming up. But I would think, by April, we can have something in front of you so we can get this thing rolling, keep it moving. And I just want to point out, on the talent, we do have the RFEI in front of us. I've, a family down in the Southern Oregon area who actually lost their home in one of those fires. So I don't think the talent project has actually moved forward. So we're definitely not going to use talent as an example for our project. We've already owned the Tony's building long enough since 2016. I think it's time that we move this thing forward and, try to push on and get something built.
Waiting though.
Right. That's it for me on that one.
Hey. All right. Peter went to sleep. I think the next thing on the agenda, if I remember right, is board member comments.
Just want to point out, it sounds like the whole talent project went sideways because there was not enough firefighters.
Right. Any other comments while you're commenting, Walter? How about you, Marcus? Anything updates from, okay. Ben? No? Okay.
No comment.
We need to have coffee. We've got some things to talk about. No other comments.
Yeah.
No, I have nothing.
Okay. All right. So anything else from staff for tonight?
Incentive program, you can expect a new incentive program application in February. This is a building that you're all familiar with. And we look forward to making an investment in that one. It is downtown on First Street. I won't give you any further hints on that right now because we're still working on some details on that. Grocery, 315 Federal is making progress. Foley making progress. We're issuing the first check on the Foley Pillar Repair project. And let's see, what am I missing? Sunshine Mill, status check on that, interior work there. No, I'm missing something, but I think that's probably,
Looking into a possible, the Dalles Hotel.
oh, yeah, yeah. So, the Dalles Hotel, the Dalles Inn is under, new ownership, looking at a very significant, renovation and possibly addition on that project.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's, talk about adding tax value. That'll get that check nicely. So,
That's the hotel that was the Tapadero once.
yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Um,
oh, sorry.
Well, go ahead. Also looking at the old post office,
Okay,
doing some renovation there.
nice. That whole section's gonna be
Beautiful little building.
great. So that made me think about what we talked about, which is signage saying these are urban renewal dollars at work.
Josh has
For that, you
already,
need authorization.
tracked down the authorization ordinance that says this is what we can do and how we can do it on signage. And so we're going to
Okay.
be researching some costs associated with that and be able to put up, whether it's a plaque, yard sign, whatever is going to look attractive, but and be informative and
Mhm.
promote the fact that, yeah, this is an urban renewal project. And this is, and this is, and Elaine hit some of those good points there. How do other funds work into it?
Mhm.
To explain that and how these different things come together. Maritime Terminal, Union Street being the big examples on that one. Those were complex, but they all involved urban renewal. funding.
Yeah. Maybe some kind of basically color scheme and something with the QR codes so that sometimes you're not gonna be able to put all the information right there, but just so people get used to seeing that and realizing that's urban renewal, I can go scan it. That's
Good idea.
urban renewal, I can
Yeah.
go scan it.
Associate the color with it. Sure.
Yeah, something like that.
I think Elaine mentioned Lincoln City, their website. I want to check that out because I do want to get photos of all the different urban renewal projects on the website
Mm.
and just remind people of what's out there.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, then I'm gonna adjourn the meeting.
Thank you all for being here.
Oh, I even got it. Thanks, everybody.